Education of Somerset Hills, please be advised that this and all meetings of the board are open to the public and media, consistent with the Open Public Meetings Act, and that advance notice required therein has been provided. This is a meeting of the Board of Education of Somerset Hills at which formal action may be taken. The public will have an opportunity to be heard as shown on the agenda. Can we have the roll call, please?
Mr. Baker? Here. Mrs. Clark Emery? Ms. Cooper?
Here.
Mrs. DeGrandpre?
Here.
Mrs. Frenda?
Here.
Mr. Joyce?
Here.
Ms. Nathans?
Here.
Mrs. Tober?
Here.
Mrs. Rye?
Here.
And Mrs. Santoro?
Here. Executive session. Whereas the Open Public Meetings Act authorizes a public body to exclude the public from that portion of a meeting at which specified topics are to be discussed under circumstances where the public consideration of such topics will clearly endanger the public, or where the personal privacy or guaranteed rights of individuals whose activities or affairs are to be discussed would be clearly in danger of unwarranted invasions, and whereas the matters about to be presented for discussion clearly meet the circumstances test of such act. Resolved that the Board of Education of Somerset Hills now adjourns its public session to reconvene in executive session for the purpose of discussing the following: personnel, student matters, contracts, negotiations, and litigation. Can I have a motion to move into executive? Pat, and a second from Sam? Okay, we can head down. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming and for your patience. We've just come out of executive session for the evening, and if everyone would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, can we have a roll call?
Mr. Baker?
Here.
Mrs. Clark Emery?
Here.
Ms. Cooper?
Here.
Mrs. DeGrandpre?
Here.
Mrs. Frenda?
Here.
Mr. Joyce?
Here.
Ms. Nathans?
Here.
Mrs. Tober?
Here.
Mrs. Rye?
Here.
And Mrs. Santoro?
Here. Okay. Dr. Dempsey, report of the superintendent, please.
Good. We are going to start this evening again with your board attorney, Derlise Gutierrez. You are top of the order. She is here to speak to us tonight about the board, committees, and how they work.
And for anyone new to the meeting this evening, I will just say we are just doing a little bit of a series of education about how the board functions and different components to help educate the public and bring some understanding to how we operate as a board. So, Derlise, thank you.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Excellent. Thank you. So, today's little talk is going to be the board, committees, and how they work. There is a board policy, number 0155. Are you moving it for me? Thanks. Right. So policy number 0155 talks about board committees. Now, Somerset Hills Board of Education functions with a committee structure. Some boards of education function as a committee of the whole, which means that they have one meeting where the entire board does everything as a committee, and that has a second board meeting in which they take action. What we do here in Somerset Hills is that you have various committees that are appointed by the board president, and the purposes of the committees is to conduct studies, to make recommendations to the board, and to act in an advisory capacity. The superintendent generally meets, either the superintendent or the business administrator is part of those committee meetings, because you can go to the next slide. and we'll say that later at the end, the superintendent is the one that makes the recommendations to the board on just about every single topic. There are very few exceptions where she does not. Board committees have no power to bind the board. So a committee is just that. It takes a subject, it analyzes it, it gathers information, they talk about it, they gather information, they look, and then they come back to the board for recommendations. So the committee has no power to take action on behalf of the board. Any recommendation from a committee has to have board approval in order for it to be effective. Next. So what you see here typically on your agenda, and Somerset Hills does it in a very elegant manner, I might add, which is that you have each of your agenda sections are a committee, and so the chair of your committee is the one that actually presents that agenda, that portion of the agenda. So you have a curriculum committee, you have a facilities and operations, you have finance, you have negotiations, which is not something that you have on the agenda, personnel, and policy. Next. So what we do here is that each committee chair presents the minutes of the committee meeting, presents all of the items that were discussed that are there for action items, and then the board votes on them and has a discussion and then votes on them. So a committee can have has to have less than a quorum. If there's a quorum for the board, right, more than half of the board present, then that's a board meeting. So a committee in Somerset Hills can have no more than 5 board members. Committee meetings are not open to the public since they are not board meetings. However, at any point in time, this board could decide that they want either on all subjects or on any particular subject to function as a committee of the whole for any particular reason. If it's something that's especially important, something that everybody, wants to have a part of, right from, digging their hands into the actual work, the board at any time can determine to work as a committee of the whole, and then official action would be taken at a meeting that's advertised where there's going to be official action. Next. As I was talking about earlier, each section of the agenda is composed of a committee. And that's how you do it here. It's quite elegant. I have not seen it in many other places, by the way. Just so you know, kudos to Somerset Hills for doing that. And as I noted earlier, with very few exceptions at all times, actions of the board are based on recommendations of the superintendent of schools. She's the one that has the authority to make recommendations to the board, and then the board takes action on those recommendations. Next. And that's it. Does the board have any questions at all? You all know how you function. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Derlise. Once again, I'm sad to report that we do not have any middle school students here to report out, so I am looking for Mariel and Chris.
So students, especially sophomores, took the PSAT 10 today, which is a great practice for the real SAT, which they have to take for college. On February 1st, we had an assembly for grades 9 through 11 called Always Connected, which teaches them about cyber safety. It was very well received by the students. A note on seniors: senior mid-year grades are officially sent and received by colleges, and we wish our fellow seniors the best of luck with where they go.
All right. In regards to some of the sports, our ice hockey team won their recent game 4-2 and won the Charette Cup, and they are now repeating champions. Our girls basketball team recently defeated Newark Lab 53-19. Yesterday, the boys basketball team defeated Roselle Park 71-55, and the girls fencing team ended on a strong note with a 14-4 victory over Mendham. And the boys saber, girls saber, and girls epee squad qualified for squad states. And at the finals at the district wrestling championships, Sean Honeywell, a senior, was named the district wrestling champion. And in regards to some of our extracurriculars, the Harvard Model Congress delegates are leaving tomorrow morning, and we wish best of luck to everyone involved. The jazz ensemble performed on February 11th at the Rowan University Jazz Festival. And the musical, which is happening this weekend, is being shown on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and we encourage everyone to come and watch.
So, a little bit note on chemistry. Honors AP Chemistry Club and students interested in chemistry in general were invited to attend the Chemistry Olympiad exam, which is going to be happening mid-March. And it's a great opportunity for students to really challenge themselves and prepare for the upcoming AP tests. A little note on Math League. Math League has started its annual Math Madness competition, where groups of 10 students form a team and compete against other high schools throughout the country to solve challenging math equations. Burners High School is currently maintaining a winning record of 2 wins to 0 losses.
And that's all we have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you both. Appreciate it. It's hard to go from students and fun at school to the auditor, but Mr. Korecki is here, the district's auditors, to present the company's report on the district's 2021 audit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is the presentation of the audit for the year ended June 30th, 2021. You should have received 2 reports. One's the financial statements. It's the annual comprehensive report, and one's the auditor's management report. Both of these reports are required by the State Department of Education. They require us to put it in their format, and they give us a manual that backs it up. I'd just like to go over the smaller report first. It's the auditor's management report. This is because it's not just a financial audit, it's also a compliance audit, and the state wants us to look at, there's like 9 or 10 different areas under compliance that they want us to look at: financial, administrative procedures, payroll, student activity funds, and things like that. There's quite a big manual. It's like a 300-page manual that backs this up, even though it's about 15 pages long. This is where a majority of the audit comes from, because it's all compliance. And I'd just like to report, out of all these areas that we looked at this year, there are no recommendations to report this year. Last year you had one. It was corrected during the year. It did not repeat. So this is a very good audit that you had this year as far as the recommendations go. There's nothing to report in here. You comply with all the rules and regulations that the State Department of Education asked us to look at. Okay. The bigger report is actually the financial statements. The financial statements come from the records of the BA's office, all the records that she maintains for the year from your budget and your bank reconciliations, and all that information is compiled, is put into financial statement format. There's a lot of information in here. It's not just financial. There's a lot of demographic information, statistical information to look at. There's a lot of different areas in here where they have financial statements, but they're summarized, so it's very difficult sometimes to read, and none of it's comparative. But there's just one I always like to point out to board members. Starts on page 85 and goes to page 93, and it's the budgetary comparison. In other words, it's very detailed. It's not, the other financial statements in there are summarized, so it's hard to follow. But if you look at this, it starts with your budget that you adopted for the year. It has all your revenues and details. It has all your appropriations and details. It gives you where you made transfers, what you actually expended by the budget items. And it also acts as a profit and loss. So, you did very well this year, but that's, as board members, that's one of the probably most important schedules in the report that you should be looking at. It gives you what's going on, because you're probably working on your budget somewhere soon around here, and it gives an idea where you came from. And that's basically about it. If you have any questions, I'll take any questions that you have on anything that we do. Okay, sure.
No, I noticed the state allowed a 4% surplus this year. Can you tell us why, and will that continue in the future?
No, it's probably only, what the state does is they have you're allowed to keep, in prior years, 2% of your operating expenditures as what they call your unassigned surplus. And because of COVID, since the budgets were already adopted, the state was saying that a lot of the your budget appropriations were not being spent, so they didn't want all this excess surplus to be generating back, where it just would be going into your, what they would call excess surplus. So they allowed you to keep your 4%. It's only for the next 2 years. And just for the next 2 years, and then it grandfathers back into the 2%. They just didn't want it to go to excess surplus where you were forced to use it into your budget. They've given you more discretion to use that surplus as you see fit, as the year is progressing. So it was a way to, in other words, take the additional surplus and give you discretion with it instead of being just going to excess surplus. Okay.
Anybody else have any questions for Warren? All right, perfect. Thank you so much. We appreciate you coming.
Okay, I'd just like to take 2 seconds to thank the superintendent and the BA for their courtesies during the audit. We do bother a lot of people, and I'd like to thank the board for appointing us auditors of the business, so thank you.
See you next year.
Thank you.
All right, I just wanted to say that I know everybody is aware we're happily anticipating the March 7th rollback of the mask mandate across the state. The most recent COVID activity index was in the moderate yellow level, and certainly we all look forward to that low green. We continue to have a handful of positive cases every week, but the numbers are on the way down, and our hope is that things will continue to go well. The Department of Health released updated guidance earlier today, and I will be honest, we got it this afternoon. I have not looked it over yet, nor has Colleen, but as has been our practice, we will discuss their recommendations with colleagues and our local health officers to inform our path forward. As always, the community can trust that the board and the administration strives to balance evolving guidance, the safety of our school community, and our commitment to prioritizing full-time in-person learning. I think that's just about all I've got, so I'm going to turn it over to Kristen DeGrand-Prey to talk to us about our retirees this evening.
Okay. Whereas Amy Fallon has been employed from August 2007 through August 2022 as an elementary school principal, and whereas Amy Fallon exemplified expertise, commitment, and professionalism in her duties, now therefore be it resolved, the Somerset Hills School District and Board of Education recognizes Amy Fallon's retirement effective September 1st, 2022, and extend her the congratulations and best wishes for a happy, healthy, and enjoyable retirement. Whereas Dennis Babick has been employed from September 2008 through April 2022 as a teacher of the art, and whereas Dennis Babick exemplified expertise, commitment, and professionalism in his duties, now therefore be it resolved, the Somerset Hills School District and Board of Education recognize Dennis Babick's retirement effective April 16th, 2022, and extend to him congratulations and best wishes for a happy, healthy, and enjoyable retirement.
Thank you so much. We will be welcoming our retirees, our Teachers of the Year, and students that we want to recognize in both May and June for Bedwell up through the high school. So we have something to look forward to. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Okay, so just an announcement that starting with the March board meeting, the board will no longer have remote public comments. This was a process that was implemented as we transitioned back from virtual meetings. Any member of the public who wishes to comment on items on the agenda or on items of interest to the school district are invited to come to the board meeting for public comment. And now we will move into public comments. We very much welcome input from the public. Public comments are welcome at this time on any actionable agenda item. Towards the end of the meeting, there is a second public forum on any topic. Please state your name and address. Comments are limited to 3 minutes, but an individual may speak a second time after all others who wish to speak on the topic have been heard. Please understand that our public forums are not structured as question and answer sessions, but are offered as opportunities to share your thoughts with the board. In instances where the board feels that there is a misunderstanding or inaccuracy, the board president or superintendent may address the comment. In accordance with New Jersey statute, the board will not discuss matters regarding specific personnel. Public comments will be limited to 30 minutes. Thank you for your input. As a reminder, Mrs. DeMarco will give you a warning when you have 30 seconds left, and we ask that everyone be respectful of all commenters. Thank you. Any public comment on actionable agenda items?
Yes. Good evening. My name is Kathleen Shepard. I live at 16 Ambar Place, Bernardsville. I'm here tonight to speak to you about the Hib Report. It could be found on page 4, item 10, Facilities and Operations, action item B, number 1, Hib Report. For those who do not know, Hib is the acronym for Harassment, Intimidation, and Bullying. Your report states there are 10 Hib cases reported at the middle school during the 10-month period that students are in attendance. I believe our district has an enrollment totaling 1,953 students. 854 attend the high school. This leaves a total of 1,099 students in both the middle school and elementary school. If we divide the total of 1,099 students in half, we're left with an average of 550 students enrolled in each school. This means 1.82% of middle school kids are accused of HIB. Although it would be optimal to have 0 Hib cases reported each year, it's unrealistic in a district of over 1,975 students. We should be proud of our students' behavior, their acceptance and respect of one another, regardless of what we look like or where we come from. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
How you doing? Steve Tobin, Ambar Place, Burnsville, New Jersey. I have a question about number 9, that is the Finance Action B, page 3 of government funds. What portion of the $11,514,259.83 make up ESSER funds? Are conditions attached in order to receive the ESSER funds? In other words, what requirements are placed upon our children so that you get this money? For those of you who don't know, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act and the Elementary Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund is a one-time appropriation from the U.S. Department of Education. The New Jersey Department of Education strongly recommends that non-recurring funding not be used for reoccurring expenditures. It should be noted that the New Jersey governor said that this is supposed to be a one-time rescue act. We are now headed for round number 3, which increases substantially from the previous rounds. I would like the courtesy of a response before the end of this meeting or in a very timely fashion, as it is important that the public be made aware that everything comes with a price. I am wondering, are our children paying that price in the form of restrictions? We would like our kids to be free from unnecessary restrictions. Thank you in advance for your explanation of these questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tobin.
Santora, would you like me to?
Yeah, if you would
Mr.
like to
Tobin,
take that.
just as a high level, I can share with you that if you go on the district website, there's a link for budget. Under the budget, there is a posting regarding the ARP funds and what the plan was to spend those. Our plan was only approved within the last, I would say, week or two, and certainly the funds that were provided have specific earmarks. So I can tell you that $40,000 of it was for summer learning, and you can go on the website and see how that is going to look at Bedwell, the middle school and the high school. $134,000 was for learning acceleration and coaching and professional development. Another $40,000 was for extended day programming, and you can again go and see that. And mental health was $40,000. So all of those things are available under that budget link.
Okay, thank you.
Sure thing.
Okay, if there are no more public comments, can I have a motion to close public comments at this time? Sarah, and a second with Nicole. Okay. Okay, can I have a motion to approve minutes? Sarah and Nicole? Any discussion on that? No? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Mrs. Clark Emery?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mrs. DeGrandpre?
Yes.
Mrs. Frenda?
Yes.
Mr. Joyce?
Yes.
Ms. Nathans?
Yes.
Mrs. Tober?
Yes.
Mrs. Rye?
Yes.
And Mrs. Santoro?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. All right, we will move into committee reports. Bob, finance, please.
I think the first thing we have to do is do a public hearing on the audit. So I'd like to open a public hearing on the audit that was just presented to the board. Do I have a second for that? Second by Sam. Does the board members have any more questions on the audit that was presented? I would recommend in your spare time to read in the thick book, the letter that's in the front from the superintendent and the business administrator. It's very insightful about what we accomplished last year. The school year that it was audited on, I want to be careful on that sense. But I think it lists our scores, the things we've done. But as a demographic, that school year, we had the largest drop in student enrollment in the last 10 years. So that jumped out at me. So we lost 82 students in the year going into the year 2021. In the last 10 years, we lost 224. So our enrollment continues to drop as predicted. But I would read this. I read this afternoon. It's an excellent summary of what we did for the year. I recommend the board should read that. And I want to thank the administration for having a clean audit this year. I really appreciate that. The board appreciates it. So do I have any other comments from the board before I let the public go? All right. Are there any public comments on the audit specifically? Seeing none, I will close the audit on the public hearing on the audit. Do I have a second? Okay, Pat. Okay, moving on to the Finance Committee report. The Finance Committee met last Wednesday, February the 16th, for an hour. All committee members were in attendance, along with Dr. Dempsey, Dr. Butler, and Mrs. DeMarco. We talked about 6 different items, which I will cover. The first item, we had another audit by the New Jersey Department of Agriculture, procurement audit. I'm not sure how often we have these, and I'll let Mrs. DeMarco answer that question once I get done. Or you can say right now.
I think this was the first one in a long time. It's not something that's done regularly.
Yeah, because I don't remember this happening before. So anyway, so they audited the 2019-20 school year, and they found 2 findings which are in the agenda for our approval. They cited us for not getting quotes on every maintenance improvement. So if it would only cost $800 to fix something, we're supposed to get 3 quotes or $1,000. Now, we normally don't do that for those small items. We normally only do anything over $40,000 is a number we go after. So going forward, we will do for just the food service equipment. So if a refrigerator, an oven, a washing machine needs fixing, we got to get quotes, and we have to record them on the Form 330. So we will do that. So that's what we're going to do. Doesn't sound real hard. I'm not sure it's a valuable use of our time. The next item we talked about was our preschool tuition for next year, because we're now doing full-day preschool. and we're only charging $350 for a half day. We need to come up with a rate for next year. So Dr. Dempsey interviewed or researched other districts around us who have full day and found a range from $800 to $450, and the committee is recommending $750. Now, these classes are very small. We only have 6 children in there who are regular education children at the moment, and it's done on a lottery basis, and it depends on how many special ed children we have, so the numbers can vary from year to year. So we're recommending $750 for the coming school year. As you know, we hired a company called Policy Find to find a liability insurance that we had back years ago, and they've made great progress, but they need another $2,000, we think, to finish the job and find out who was covering us several decades ago. So the committee is recommending to give them $2 more thousand cap. It's a cap. They might not spend it, but we're recommending the cap. We also talked about the audit, which I'm not going to go into since we've already done that. And the final item was the budget for next year. Since we met last month, the administration has closed the gap between revenues and expenditures, and we're pretty much down at just a slight surplus right now. But I do want to warn everybody that the state aid will be announced late this year. As you know, the governor's postponed his budget address from now until 2 weeks. So once he gives his budget address, every school district gets the state aid within 48 hours. So right now we're hoping our state aid holds flat, but if it goes down, then we're going to have to scramble and make some changes. So the Finance Committee will meet on the 10th of March instead of the 9th of March, so we can make sure that the budget is on track. We also discussed some capital improvements for the coming year. We had originally decided to get a 30-passenger bus on a lease basis, and we've had a discussion that we think it would be in our best interest to get a 54-passenger bus. So that would be our third large bus, and that would be recommending to get no lease. We're also going to move the expenditure of getting a new internet, no switching and fiber optic lines on all the campuses, move to capital improvements, which is $240,000. So that takes money out of the general expenses into the capital line. And then we talked about getting either the turf replaced or the track replaced on Alcott Field. The turf field is starting to age, and the architect is recommending that, or is estimating that the turf replacement would be $338,000, which is just you rip off the old turf and you put a new one down. Where the track, to tear up the track and resurface it would be $900,000 or maybe $1 million. So right now we felt we can only afford to do the turf field at the moment, and you don't need to do both at the same time. People might think, well, why don't you do them at the same time? But that's a lot of money, and we still want to do the track, so right now we're thinking of doing the turf first, and we're going to put that into the budget as a capital item. And girls volleyball. Okay, we talked about girls volleyball, and the girls volleyball team wrote to us. It's a club sport, so the board is interested in doing that. So I just want to say that we like to do that. We think we can do it, and we will make that announcement hopefully by next month when we do the budget. So I would like to move action items 1 through 9. Do I have a second? Second, okay. Any discussion on what I talked about or anything else that's on the finance agenda? Everybody's quiet tonight, okay. All right, roll call.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Mrs. Clark Emery?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mrs. de Grandpré?
Yes.
Mrs. Frenda?
Yes.
Mr. Joyce?
Yes.
Miss Nathans?
Yes.
Mrs. Tober?
Yes.
Mrs. Rye?
Yes.
Mrs. Santoro?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. All right, Pat, F&O, please.
Good evening. F&O met last Wednesday on the 16th for approximately 1 hour. All the board members on the committee were in attendance. In addition, Drs. Dempsey and Butler were there, along with Mrs. DeMarco. Jeremy Schwartz, the IT manager, was also there to speak with us. You might remember he was going to speak to us last month, but he couldn't make it, but he made it this month. I do want you all to know that we weren't able to tour the high school. We will be doing that next month. So by the time next month rolls around, we'll have visited all 3 schools in the district in person. So the first thing we discussed was the technology needs assessment that was presented to us by Mr. Schwartz, and he reminded us that the goal was to consider the district's technology from a needs assessment standpoint, and he developed a very detailed priorities plan to address areas of concern. You have the document. I know that you've seen it, so if you have any questions about it as I go along, just ask. Mr. Schwartz updated the committee on highlights of his needs. He outlined that what is included in the 22-23 budget for the district will focus on much-needed updates to infrastructure. And as Bob mentioned, we're talking about switches and fiber cables for the district. Also, Dr. Dempsey talked about mask requirements with us. The governor's announcement had been made by that point. We've had public feedback and some prior questioning. I think Mrs. Tober wanted to know about masks and PE, and I think that that's all going to be settled once Drs. Dempsey and Butler have a chance to look at the updated material from the state. The district is in the process of finalizing an updated mask policy, and parents and stakeholders can be assured that they will be notified via email blast and through the Friday folder as to the particulars of it. It will be completed, I'm assuming, Dr. Dempsey, before the 7th. Yes. Okay. Mask optional, there we go. Okay. As Mrs. Santoro talked about, we will no longer, after this meeting, have public comment via email, but meetings will continue to be live streamed so as to continue enhanced access by the community to board meetings. And we did consult with the board's lawyer about whether or not we had to have email comment into board meetings. So we're encouraging people who would like to come and talk to the board to show up in person. We discussed New Jersey Environmental Protection Sustainability Management. They want to have a meeting here at the PAC regarding the transfer station, the waste transfer station that's going to be going in Bernardsville. They felt that the space to meet at Borough Hall was not large enough, and the DEP requested use of the PAC for a community meeting. The committee says that they feel that this is a good use of space and that we don't have any problem with that outside group using the PAC for that meeting. We discussed mentors for board members, and as I understand it, Mr. Baker, you are a mentor, and I'm sorry, who's the other mentor? Mrs. Frenda. And they will be mentoring new board members, and I have to say I'm a little jealous because I could have used a little mentoring when I came on myself. So I applaud this move by the board. Community relations from an F&O perspective. The status update on the residency reaffirmation goal. Residency reaffirmation has started. The district will be collecting proof of residency from every family at the family level. Transportation update. A new director of transportation has been hired. His name is Frank, am I going to say this right, Riccio? Riccio. We hope to have him here by the end of March. You received as a committee the updated long-range facility plan. If you have any questions regarding it, please let me know. And finally, I think this is finally, yes. There's a request for a new scholarship at the high school level. We received a request from the LPW Women in Business, and the scholarship will be for women in business. It's on the board agenda for approval this evening. The scholarship is funded by LPW Training Services, Limited Liability. What's the C? No? Commission? I'm sorry. The scholarship will be given to a female student accepted into a business school who plans to major in a business or STEM-related field. And that being said, that is the end of my reporting out. Does anyone have any questions?
Ms. Rye, I just wanted to clarify one thing about the residency reaffirmation. There are certain grades that are excluded from that because we're checking residents when they move from one school to another. In addition, this past week, and I thank people who reached out, it seems like there was a glitch and there were some families in Far Hills and Gladstone that did not receive their letters, so we are rectifying that, and they are going out tomorrow.
Thank you, Dr. Dempsey.
Do you want to get a motion and then we can have discussion?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd like to move action items number 1 and 2. Yes. Can I ask for questions? Okay.
Get your second.
Okay, second.
Thank you.
And now, are there any questions from the board?
So, and I just want to make a clarification on email. So, board members can still be reached by email through our district website. We will just not be taking public comment via email anymore. So I just want to make sure that was clear for everyone. We are still accessible by email through the website. And then I just want to say the technology needs assessment. You know, sometimes you're on the board for the start of something and you see it to come to fruition. And Gretchen, when you started, you saw that as a big need for our district and a critical need. And so I know a lot of work went into this, and, thanks to Jeremy and his team and to you for getting this done, because this is going to really aid the district going forward with regards to every aspect of technology. So that was a really insightful project you brought, and I think it's going to benefit the district. So thank you to everybody involved to make this happen. Yes, he did a great job, absolutely. That was it.
Any more comments? Can you take the roll call, please?
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Mrs. Clark Emery?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mrs. DeGrandpre?
Yes.
Mrs. Frenda?
Yes.
Mr. Joyce?
Yes.
Ms. Nathans?
Yes.
Mrs. Tober?
Yes.
Mrs. Rye?
Yes.
And Mrs. Santoro?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Nicole, curriculum, please.
The Curriculum Committee met on Tuesday, February 15th for 2 hours and 15 minutes. All committee members attended along with Dr. Dempsey, Dr. Butler, Dr. Nigel, and Ms. Barna. First, Dr. Nigel joined us to discuss challenges associated with the summer gym program for seniors at the high school. And just to review, Summer Gym is a program in which rising seniors can complete 90 hours of physical activity and 30 hours of life skills training to satisfy the PE requirement for their senior year over the summer. And that usually gives them an opening in their schedule during their senior year. And so then the 90 hours of physical activity must be verified by a coach or a trainer. And most students who participate in Summer Gym use this opening to take another class, and usually an AP, during the academic year. The Somerset County Educational Services Commission has historically run this program. However, in recent years, Dr. Nigel has not been satisfied with how the commission has handled the program and recommends that we discontinue the use of their services related to the program. He also expressed concerns with the implications of Summer Gym for equity, given that the program may not be accessible to all students, considering the potentially high cost of the coaches and trainers needed to satisfy the requirements. He also indicated that he thinks that Summer Gym is a program unique to Somerset Hills, and it isn't offered by other neighboring districts. The committee agreed with Dr. Nigel's recommendation to discontinue use of the commission's services for Summer Gym, and we also agreed to halt the summer PE program, at least temporarily, while we revisit the entirety of the summer programming at the high school. Next, Ms. Barna presented her recommendations for expanding reading opportunities in the language arts program at the high school. The proposed changes will broaden the text offerings and reading experiences within English courses, help address the developmental needs of our high school students, and ensure continuity between K through 8 and the high school instruction and literacy. The proposed changes to the curriculum will provide additional text options within a unit to allow teachers to choose text based on their students' needs, and to ensure that the texts are accessible, relevant, and appropriate to students in the class. The updated curriculum will also provide access to supplementary titles to increase reading volume, promote a skill-based approach instead of a text-based approach, and provide additional opportunities for student choice and engagement. It is also hoped that these changes will encourage instructional practices that support the development of interpersonal relationships and empathetic engagement. The committee fully supported these changes to the curriculum, and similar changes have also been instituted in neighboring districts, including at Ridge, in Chatham, and at Madison. Another topic we discussed was the possibility of incorporating additional instruction in study skills in the middle school and curriculum. The committee agreed that such instruction may ease the transition between the middle school and the high school, which has been cited as an area of need within the strategic planning sessions. Such instruction could be incorporated into the tools for wellness class or in related arts classes at the middle school. We also approved all field trip and professional development requests and briefly discussed the district's plan for bilingual education, which you'll see on the agenda this month. And we spent a lot of the meeting discussing 3 drafts of the proposed calendar for 2022 to 2023 school year. Drafts A and B we discussed last month, and draft C represents a compromise between A and B. In all drafts, the first day of school for students is Tuesday, September 6th, the day after Labor Day. The committee generally, but not unanimously, preferred draft B, largely due to the later end dates of draft A and B and C. We briefly discussed moving the last professional development day, which is typically scheduled the day after the last day of school for students, earlier in the year, but the committee ultimately decided to leave the originally proposed date as is. Ultimately, we decided that a full board discussion regarding 2 calendar-related issues is warranted. We'd really like the board's input on 2 topics. First, the committee would like to hear the board's opinions on the possibility of decoupling spring break from Easter, which will allow us to schedule spring break earlier in the year, potentially in mid to late March. We'd also like to hear your opinions about whether we should revisit previous discussions regarding moving the first day of school earlier in the year. And that concludes my report. I'd like to move items 1 through 7 on the agenda. And I don't think I have anything on the addendum, but do I have a second? Great, thank you. So any discussions on these topics? Any thoughts on moving spring break or the first day of school?
Am I on? Yeah, I am. Okay. Obviously, we discussed in committee decoupling spring break from Easter, and I certainly think, from where I sit, that that is a good discussion for everybody to have and to weigh in on. I think it holds a lot of value. From a community standpoint, I think it's important to consider how long the period between winter break and our current spring break is, with minimal, rest and time to recover in there. So I think that is something that really speaks to me. And as far as decoupling from Easter, I think that we all, in the course of that discussion, the Good Friday would remain. Easter is on a Sunday, and I think it allows a lot more flexibility within the calendar structure to schedule spring break.
No, I would support moving this spring break into March, either the second or third week. That would be my thing, because I agree, because the board's talked about this in the past, about you want to break, if you look at the calendar from when we come back in January to the end of school, if you do March, mid-March, the third week, everybody knows it's that week, it's always that week. And we know Easter, and Easter moves around all the time, so I would support that. I would also support trying to move the start of school back before Labor Day, but take small steps so the parents and everybody can get to see what happens as we move into August, okay? So, but we got to give everybody time to think about that. So maybe the year after this year, we would start on, the students would come back like on September 1st or 2nd. I don't have the calendar in front of me, but that would be a goal. So, so that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Bob.
Nicole, I'll just chime in and say I agree with everything that Sam and Bob said in terms of decoupling spring break. So I would be in favor of having that discussion.
Great. Thank you.
And speaking from the perspective, not as a board member, but as a teacher who's now going into an 8-week uninterrupted in my district from this past Monday until when we go on break, I would definitely say decoupling it from Easter is a really good idea.
Great, thank you.
I just also wanted to speak to the starting the school year earlier. I don't know where I would weigh in on that, but I definitely support the investigation process. I think that before we move towards making any decisions, I think there's a great deal of data that is required for us to look at, the reasons behind why we would want to move in that direction. So I would definitely support moving in that direction to, I know this is something that has been on the table for quite some time, and it's been a discussion, and I think at this point, we have new board members that have come on that haven't been privy to that in the past, and I think that to move forward and to finally have that discussion, to let the data bear out, to let, the reasons and rationales surface, and finally decide if we do want to move in that decision or not. Direction, not decision.
Yeah, I will just echo everything. I am very comfortable with proceeding to decouple spring break from the Easter holiday and looking at a set week in a March timeframe for that going forward. And as part of the early decisions and some of the early programs, or going to some information sessions with regards to moving the start date of school up earlier in the school year. I am definitely interested in resuming that conversation. To Sam's point, I think that we need a lot of data, and I think, our administration can kind of help us sort through what's critical, what may be important, what may not be, so that we can all make an informed decision on that, because I know, as a community, that would be a change to Bob's point. So, I think some data gathering and consideration and this board dialogue with our administration around that would be beneficial to see if ultimately that would have a positive impact on our students. So I would be in favor in pursuing that in an appropriate time frame.
Heather, I agree with you. I think that we do need more information, but I would definitely be open. I think that's a great idea. And I also must say thank you to the board and the committee, especially Dr. Dempsey and Ms. Santoro, for keeping and preserving some of our holidays, such as Martin Luther King's birthday, as well as President's Day. And that's not something to take for granted because it's a federal holiday, but to thank you guys for considering that and keeping those.
We have to thank
preserved.
Colleen. She is the
Thank you,
queen of
Colleen.
the calendar.
Okay, thank you.
So are you supporting the moving the spring break earlier or into March, or the discussions regarding moving the start date earlier?
Discussions on all of it, on moving both.
Just discussions, okay.
Yes, absolutely, and just getting information and
both.
gathering it, yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Absolutely.
I'll just chime in quickly and say I do support the decoupling of Easter and spring break. You know, I think February and March are grind months in many ways, so giving a break to teachers and administrators and students is probably a good thing. And then also playing catch up with the conversation regarding the school start date, the reasons why, obviously weighing the pros and cons, and gathering a multitude of opinions. So, yeah.
It will get us a draft of the following years next month.
I would support separating it as well for spring break. They definitely need the break. I think as well, looking at moving school start earlier would definitely be something that would need consideration. I think we all remember last month hearing from some of the AP teachers how they do need more time on the front. So taking those types of things into consideration of how it can benefit our students, but also ensuring we do take time and make sure that we have time for both the teachers as well as for families to adjust if we do make that adjustment is definitely needed.
Thank you. Great. Anybody else?
No one didn't weigh in, but I said it to
Yeah,
the committee.
committee.
And yes, I'm in agreement to separate the two. Start date, we'll see what happens.
Investigating.
Investigating the idea, always open to see what would make the most sense.
I think that's it. Should we have a roll call?
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Mrs. Clark Emery?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mrs. DeGrandpre?
Yes.
Mrs. Frenda?
Yes.
And abstain on 4A.
And abstain for 4A. Yes, thank you.
Mr. Joyce?
Yes.
And also abstain on 4A.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stand up for it.
Ms. Nathans?
Yes.
Mrs. Tober?
Yes.
Mrs. Rye?
Yes.
And Mrs. Santoro?
Yes, but abstain from 4A.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Okay, let's see, we are at personnel.
So the Policy and Personnel Committee met on the 17th. All committee members were in attendance, as well as Dr. Dempsey, Dr. Butler, and Dr. Nigel joined us for part of the policy discussion. But in regards to personnel, we did discuss a number of confidential items that are on the agenda now for approval, but things that we talked about that were not confidential before the agenda. We discussed a draft of the job description for head coaching positions that was proposed, and we discussed that this would be helpful to have clear expectations for a baseline for any coaches that would be in positions that the board would be approving to help with baseline expectations and basic competencies and behavioral expectations for all coaches, and also discussed that a assistant coaching job description would be beneficial as well. We felt that they would be best to be discussed together and in more detail, and to bring Mr. Hoppy into the discussion, so we'll be discussing that further in our next meeting in March. We also discussed the job description for the new HR specialist that is on the agenda for approval, as well as the reworking of the organizational structure for reporting. We also noted and discussed that there was not previously a reading specialist job description, despite the fact that we had a number of people in those roles. So we ensured that we did have one on file and reviewed that as well. And then we discussed the confidential updates as well. So I'd like to move action items 1 through 30 on your agenda.
I'll second.
Any questions or comments?
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Mrs. Clark Emery?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mrs. DeGrompré?
Yes.
Mrs. Frenda?
Yes.
Mr. Joyce?
Yes.
Ms. Nathans?
Yes.
Mrs. Tober?
Yes.
Mrs. Rye?
Yes.
And Mrs. Santoro?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay. All right, Chris, and policy.
Okay, in the policy portion, that was the two meetings back-to-back on the 17th that everybody was in attendance for. We had Dr. Nigel join us for the beginning, and in that part, we discussed the rewording and the working that's on the agenda for approval for R5131 and P5131, looking at student randomized drug testing, and clarification for that in the non-negative samples that students may have that would come back, and what that process would look like, and any scripting for discussion that would be had with the students and with the parents that day to ensure that the students and the parents had clear clarification on the process and the next steps to decrease any anxiety that would be had by both the students and the parents in the testing process. We also discussed the randomization of the pooling and the selection process, and how long students spent outside of school classes to have the testing completed. We went on to further discuss our policy and committee discussions from last year about looking at the Board of Ed bylaws. We reviewed the committee's comments from last year and discuss clarification of certain sections and titles that we'll be looking at over the coming months to help to clarify a little bit within the realms of Strauss-Esme, and ensuring that we keep clarity and don't get caught in any further changes that we would need to make and be unaware of the changes coming forward. We went on to look at other policies that were recommended by Strauss-Esme for changes. So we looked at R2460.30, which is additional compensatory special education and related services. That's a new policy that was recommended, and that's looking into additional education requirements that are there for English language services. And we went on as well to review policy P8465 and regulation R8465, which is related to bias crimes and bias-related acts, and that was for clarification and ensuring that we were following both MOA and administrative codes and that they were well aligned in reporting. And we went on as well to look at P2622 and R2622, which is related to student assessments. Beyond that, we made sure in reviewing all these policies that we were reviewing them with the eye of the community in mind, and ensuring that any new policies, procedures, or regulations that we were putting in place had the best interest of the students at heart at all times, and ensuring we weren't adding any undue stress to them in that process. So with that, I'd like to move action agenda items 1 and 2 on the agenda. Any questions?
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Mrs. Clark Emery?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Mrs. DeGrompré?
Yes.
Mrs. Frenda?
Yes.
Mr. Joyce?
Yes.
Ms. Nathans?
Yes.
Mrs. Tober?
Yes.
Mrs. Rye?
Yes.
And Mrs. Santoro?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Sam, strategic planning.
Okay, so the Strategic Plan Committee is the ad hoc committee that has been put together as we work through the goals identified in the strategic planning process. And we had met prior to last month's meeting, and we needed a follow-up meeting, and met again on January 31st to continue reviewing the goals, all goals that we had established during that process, and to prioritize items that would need to be incorporated into this year's budget. So we finished that work with Dr. Dempsey, and we also discussed things that we could move forward with that would have minimal impact to the 22-23 budget, but yet still move forward with relatively imminently. So Dr. Dempsey took those takeaways and brought them to her administrators, and they discussed key takeaways in small groups and reported back to their admin councils. And then Dr. Dempsey, they conferred with Dr. Dempsey, and now Dr. Dempsey, this is in her hands for the moment, and she is in the process of creating action plans based on those goals, which were identified by the community. And once those action plans are developed, the ad hoc committee will come back together to hear her action plans and to review them. And that's where things stand right now.
Ms. Fender, my goal is to have that to you sometime within March. Ideally, it would be before the next meeting, but we'll see if that works out, ideally.
Okay, perfect.
Any discussion on that? No. Okay, supplementary matters. Do any board members have any supplementary matters this evening? No? Okay, so we will move on to public comments. Public comments are welcome at this time on any topic. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Please state your name and address, and thank you for your input. Again, Ginny will give you a sign at 30 seconds when you have 30 seconds left.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Barbara Long from Lloyd Road. And
Ms. Long, can you please speak into the microphone? Thank you.
Yes. I live on Lloyd Road. The presence of a lawyer at these monthly meetings must be costly. In an effort to improve the education of the students, which has been shown to be inferior to the schools around us, this would be a good place to generate some income for the cause. At the next meeting, I would like an answer as to the cost of having legal representation at each meeting. We, the people, have made no efforts to disrupt school board proceedings. We are just a passionate public, stemming from the polarization of opinions over critical race theory, transgender rights and mask mandates, and certainly conflicts in budget disbursements. I'm hard-pressed to be comfortable with the cost of the lawyer and the police when we do not have funding for proper education. School board meetings minutes, the school board meeting minutes serve as the official records of the meetings and provides public access to the actions of the governmental body. In litigation, the courts have found meeting minutes to be conclusive evidence of what transpired at a meeting or what action was taken by the board. We, the people, are transparent. We do not need the lawyer and the police.
Thank you for your comment.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Duff. I live on Crestview Drive in Bernardsville. I just want to voice my wholehearted support for decoupling spring break from Easter, and also with starting the school year early. I think it would be nice for the kids to start and then have a long weekend. And it would also be nice to have maybe a couple extra vacation days sprinkled throughout the year. And I really appreciate that the board is looking into changing something, because I know changing things can be very hard. So I appreciate that you're looking into changing it. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Hi, I'm Carrie Hazelton. I live on Minebrook Road, 202. I just wanted to step up and say that I'm in favor of professional development for our administrators, for our teachers, and when I see lists of classes that teachers have asked to attend, like motivating the unmotivated, teaching the hard-to-reach student, using art to increase learning, and other evidence-based practices to improve teaching in the classroom. I feel like this, relying on the teachers to know what they need to learn to help our kids learn, is our best step towards making sure that our classroom performance is as good as it can be for each and every kid, who can be reached individually by the teachers who know them best. So thank you very much for supporting professional development for the teachers and administrators.
Thank you. We appreciate your comment.
Hi, Annie Ferrante, Mullins Lane, Bernardsville. I just wanted to thank you for addressing these study skills. I was at the strategic planning meeting, and study skills at the middle school leading into high school has been a pretty big problem in my household, and I know several others. So I just really wanted to express my gratitude towards your taking that on. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have two comments that were sent in via email today. One is from Mark Schwartz, 53 Peapack Road, Peapack, Gladstone. With the recent scandal at Basking Ridge Public Schools, which involved the employment of a known sexual predator, I'd like to know what steps the school district board superintendent have taken to thoroughly vet all new and existing employees to ensure that they do not have any type of criminal history. Parents trust the school employees to be around their children for almost 8 hours a day. Parents need to be sure that their children are safe. While Basking Ridge dealt with this horrific scandal, it did not affect the school's overall performance. When you look at the performance of Bedwell, Bernards Middle School, and Bernards High School, all three pale in comparison. What is the school board doing to improve terrible scores we currently have? There has been no sign of improvement and no clear plan on how the school board superintendent plan to improve the school scores. Currently, Bedwell is ranked 5 out of 10 by greatschools.org. This is the benchmark measurement that a school needs to improve significantly and quickly. Taxpayers cannot hear any excuses about this, that this is an accurate reporting site. This is the gold standard that all new home buyers consider when buying a home, and since property taxes are the main source of public school funding, it must be addressed. Taxpayers demand a clear and targeted plan to increase the scores immediately. The school board must do its job to improve our school. The current scores are not acceptable. What is the school board's plan? What is Gretchen Dempsey's plan? Parents, taxpayers, and students want to know. Respectfully, Mark. Another came in this afternoon. Kathy DeLuca, Main Street, Peapack. I have some comments on the protocols for COVID related to quarantine and contact tracing. The updated guidelines from January state that an unvaccinated child who is a close contact will have to quarantine 5 days, missing school, and we all know that even with virtual, only an option for elementary, I believe, is not the same as in person. The risk for children dying from COVID is very low. There is a greater risk of your child dying anytime you get behind the wheel with them in the car or allow your child to swim in a pool. Anyone concerned about the potential risk that is around the children has had the opportunity for vaccination. Additionally, there were 199 influenza deaths in children in the 2019-2020 season. Flu is actually higher risk than COVID for students, but when children are exposed to someone with the flu or have flu symptoms, they do not send for a flu test. Why not? For symptomatic children, including vaccinated students with symptoms of a cold, they need to await PCR test result, missing 2 to 3 days of school. If the child is symptom and fever-free after a day, considering some children may have allergies and not even a cold, shouldn't the district accept a rapid test? Regarding contact tracing, I know of a student in the district that was contact traced incorrectly and ended up missing school unnecessarily. All of these scenarios are concerning, related to learning loss. Speaking of learning loss, I was wondering if any of the ESSER funds accepted by the district will be used to supplement children's learning. My children are young for their grade and have struggled due to shutdowns and virtual learning. They would greatly benefit from additional tutoring, learning programs. I would hope some of these funds could be used for such a purpose, and for all children in the district to have the opportunity if desired. I have asked at a meeting in the fall for information on specific related specifics related to ESSER fund spending and still have not received an answer. Thank you.
Okay, I will just address a couple things. Dr. Dempsey addressed the ESSER fund spending, which is posted on our website and was recently approved. So for Mrs. DeLuca, that is certainly available to her on our website. And then I would just like to discuss for a moment and clarify the notion of test scores, school ranking, and the questioning of whether this board and administration are addressing these areas of concern. And I first would like to note that with the exception of the Start Strong assessments that took place in the fall, as a district, we have not undergone testing since 2019. So that data is obviously older, and we will be going through testing in the spring, but the websites that are referenced with regards to test scores have data that is from 2019. Having said that, our administration works diligently to constantly improve and enhance and enrich the academic experience of all of our students. That is here, and that is why they are here, and that is what we do on a regular basis. The board provides a role in that by assisting in prioritization and working with the administration to set budget, priorities, and making sure that our school is well run. And that is what we do monthly, while our administration works daily at these activities. So the notion that we are not addressing academic achievement and improvement is unfounded, and I just want to go on record and be clear about that. Month after month, we provide detail in the reports that we provide as to how we are going about this. And I will just one more time go through some of the things that we have done over the last several years. I'm going to go through a quick list. It is not by any means exhaustive. So Dr. Dempsey, please do not think that this is an exhaustive list, but we'll start with when Dr. Dempsey came on as superintendent. She recognized a need in our math curriculum, that it wasn't aligned to the standards as we would like it to be, so she immediately embarked on an assessment of that, and then a robust assessment, an evaluation process that involved administrations, teachers, and staff members to select a new math curriculum. Once that assessment, that dynamic and standard-aligned math curriculum was chosen 2 years ago after that robust process. And despite the fact that we were in the middle of a pandemic last year, we implemented that curriculum and rolled it out, which was no small feat for anybody involved. So we now have a new math curriculum that we will not be able to determine the results of for a bit of time, and we are working through that, and we are working through it in a time where our educational process has been completely disrupted. Additionally, Nicole gave a robust report this evening about how our curriculum advisor for our English Language Arts program recognized an area of curriculum that she wanted to enhance. And we went through that in curriculum, we discussed it, and those are the types of improvements that get rolled out on a regular basis. And that is one small example in the area of our English Language Arts program. I'm going to go back to our math curriculum for a moment because along with that, we introduced a benchmark assessment tool that we've been utilizing for the past year and a half and have already found to provide tremendous data and insight into individual student progress towards learning standards. And that's important to note. It's based on individual student progress. And based on that information, we are able to build personalized learning paths for all of our students. This benchmark program is being used currently in our math program K through 8 and is being piloted in our English language art programs. So that is a significant enhancement that was made in the midst, again, of a pandemic to better educate our students and all of our students. We have implemented a summer program and an after-school program for our English language learners. We have hired a teacher to identify and address the learning gaps of our English language learning students. We adopted hands-on English resources for newcomer students with no English background. We provided professional development for additional sheltered instruction for classroom and content area teachers to help support ELL students in classrooms. We've adopted new courses for high school students with interrupted education and advanced level ESL instruction for students that are ready to test out. And again, this is by no means an exhaustive list, but I am bringing this to light so that people understand that monthly when we report out on these things, these are the incremental steps that our administration is taking on a daily basis to improve the academic experience for our children, which is what is important to us as a board and as a school district. And I will just conclude on this note that we wrapped up a strategic planning process that the entire community was invited to. It took place over the course of 3 months and 3 different sessions, and I would like to read the mission statement of that program, of what came out from our community members as far as the mission statement of our school district. And that is to provide an authentic and balanced learning experience for each student by harnessing the power of innovation and engaged community to create thoughtful and impactful global citizens. This is what drives the decision-making of our board and our administration. So I want to point that out with regards to the notion that test scores are being brought up and that we're not paying attention. Because there's so much more to education than test scores, and we wholeheartedly embrace that and understand that as a board and a school district. So thank you. I just wanted to make that clarification. I don't know if there's anything that you feel
No, I think you
important
did a
to
great
address.
job, Heather. One of the things that's very important to me is the reliance on data to inform how we instruct. And so you mentioned the benchmark assessments and the program that goes along with them that we originally planned for K-5 in math. We then expanded to 6-8, and we then expanded to reading. So I think that combined with the elevation program that we brought in to look at the data for the success of our ESL students, combined to give us real-time information about how best to meet kids' needs.
Hi. Hi. Hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hi. My name is Michael Beckerman from PPAC Gladstone, 23 Tiger Hill Drive. This is my first meeting ever, Board of Ed meeting, so super impressed, thrilled to be here. Thanks for encouraging me to go. Some of my friends are here. So I would just like to sort of bring a different perspective to all of you, and that's really from the future, right? So this is more from the business perspective, just to give you some thoughts about what is happening outside world with these students when they come into the workforce. So my company, a global company, about 100,000 members globally, it's in technology. And the 2 fastest growing jobs in the world today, the students are not being prepared for. And I see it every day, and I see it every day around the world. And the two fastest growing jobs in corporate America are DEI. It's up 140% over last year. 140% globally. Diversity, equity, inclusion. And this is corporate America, entrepreneurial companies, tech companies, every day. They're desperate to hire talent that understands DEI. The second job is ESG, environmental, social governance. And what my fear is, and a lot of us that are running companies, is that the students are just not prepared for the workforce that's greeting them. And it's everything that's happening. It's climate. You've got issues with migration. You've got LGBTQ numbers at an all-time high. I think it's 10% of all Americans identify as LGBTQ now. And if we're not teaching more tolerance, more education, more diversity, my fear is that our students are going to be left behind. And that's why a lot of what we're seeing in the corporate world is that Europe is far outpacing the United States in terms of hiring talent that has the training, the sensitivity, and the education on these critical issues. And so, I got a junior and a freshman in the school district. They have had the best experience. It's been phenomenal as a parent, just tremendous. And my job at home is to teach them diversity, equity, inclusion with my wonderful wife, Sujin. But I'm telling you, it must be a priority in the terms of the educational system, because the workforce is stressed out of its mind because they can't hire enough students that are getting this type of education. They're getting it in other parts of the world. We've got to do a better job here. DEI, ESG. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sam Beebe, 8 Mosley Road, Gladstone. I'm here to thank the Board of Education for supporting diversity, inclusion, and equity last month. I know that the board and the administrators utilize data to drive what our schools need to be successful, and they have followed the signs to ensure that our schools were open during the pandemic. So I thank you all for that. Education is compulsory in New Jersey. Somerset Hill School District is a public school, not a government school, and needs to meet the needs of every student in this district. The individual taxpayer votes in the Board of Ed members, and they hire the superintendent. Taxpayers cannot mandate curriculum. This is guided by the state of New Jersey. I also want to thank our professional teachers who know how to teach the state standards. They understand how to handle age-appropriate conversation with their students, and students can handle and learn from these conversations. We as parents just need to be open-minded. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Mitchell, One Pine Hollow, Burnsville. Thank you, Michael. I thought that was a tremendous perspective that you gave about talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and I guess a way to look at it with a lens outside of the school, which is really important, because I think we need to be able to have our kids develop that lens, because they're not just students, they're going to be entering the world. But with that in mind, I want to say I fully support this school district and all they do when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think they do a tremendous job. I have 3 kids in the district. I have a daughter in high school. I have one in middle school. I have one in elementary school. And just some of the things, in case people don't know, that they do that I think are just tremendous, is they have this thing called Rachel's Challenge in the elementary school, where they have this chain reaction. What's that about? Being kind, including others. I want my kids to learn that. That's important. Michael's in the real world. He's out there. He knows. That's what we need, people that can do that. We have this great bench at Bedwell. You know, it's in honor of a child who we lost here in this community. And any kid who's alone, not feeling included, can go and sit there, and other kids will come up and ask them to play. That's so important. You know, we heard someone talking about test scores and this, and I get that to some degree, but this is the kind of stuff that, as a parent, I'm like, yes, this is what we're all about. You know, equity, so important. We have 504 plans for kids here in the school. We have IEPs. It's all about equity. Helping our most struggling, marginalized students. We have to do that. That's so important. We can't lose focus of how important that is. And diversity. I think it's great that we have Martin Luther King Day. We celebrate Black History Month. I want our kids to have those experiences. Next year, the social studies standards are changing. I think we're putting civics in, which I think is great. But we're also going to be having the impact of Asian Americans. I think that's tremendous. I recently have learned that the most decorated unit in World War II was Infantry Regiment 442. It was a segregated unit of Japanese Americans who went to go fight and die for our country in World War II. While their mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters were at home in America, most of them in prison camps because they were Japanese Americans. So I love the fact that our kids are going to be able to come to school next year and learn about the impact of Japanese Americans. Our kids need to know these things. I think it brings us together, and I encourage our Board of Education and our teachers to continue doing a great job when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thank you for all you do in your service.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell.
Hi, it's Carrie Hazelton from Minebrook Road again. I just wanted to make a point about test scores, which I'm sure I don't need to make to the board because we know that it's important to compare apples to apples. When we think about test scores, when we think about 2019 test scores, what we should be focusing on is improving our 2019 test scores, not comparing our 2019 test scores to districts that are not us, that do not have the same students we do. They have different students. We're teaching our students, they're teaching their students, and we should be looking to improve our test scores and our individual results and the quality of the kids that are coming out of here as people that are ready to go out and work and contribute to society in a kind way. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, if there are no other public comments at this moment, can I have a motion to close public comments? Second? Kathy? Okay. All right, and can we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Bob. Second? Pat. Thank you for coming.